So today we're going to talk about 5 big mistakes that gold players make. These things we're going to be topics we're going to be talking about are things I've sort of noticed, throughout coaching players in this SR, and it's things that generally, if they fix, you should be able to get out of gold and get to plat. So before we get into that, I just want to say this SR is a really interesting place. A lot of people use the term elo hell, but I don't really fully believe in that. I think it's more of it's tricky because you have to deal with a lot of smurfs, as well as you have people who, in general, to climb this SR in gold, you have to honestly play probably about 300-400 SR better than you need to be. So if you're like 2.3 to get to like plat, you probably need to play around like 2.8 because you need to honestly be able to beat a lot of people who are unfairly placed and smurfs, as well as people that are you're just levers too. So you really have to like really be above your rank to be able to climb. But let's go straight into it. Let's sort of talk tips based off roles. So the first thing, tips based off roles, let's start with supports. So for supports, right, the big thing we're going to say essentially is that it's really important that you live. The amount of times I've seen supports like die when you're up like 1 or even up 2 and then you die right after, that's not good enough, because then if you die and then someone else follows up and kills your tank because you don't have enough heals, right, it goes really poorly. So it's really important as supports that you're not dying first or you're not dying second. In general, you should be dying like close to last, so you need to be thinking about living. And as well as when you're playing support, make sure you position properly before the fight starts. You shouldn't be on payload, right? You should be playing further back. And you make sure you're playing in your corners, make sure you have good LOS, like basic stuff like that will actually go a long way. Tanks. So tanks is probably one of the biggest things. There's a lot of things we can talk about tanks, but this is probably one of the biggest things. The amount of times I'm playing like, on this map and there's a Reinhardt here and, I'm playing BAP or something and I'm around on diamond, but this happens, I've sometimes with people who are in plat or lower, because friends, but a lot of times a Ryan will just push really fast and like without even looking where the supports are, and like I'm like over here and the Ryan just runs in and then he's like and he gets like frustrated and he's like, oh, like I'm not getting healed, and I'm like, well, yeah, I should have said something, and normally I do calm a bit. I say like, yeah, I'm not there, but the Ryan and in general tanks need to be more aware of where your supports are before they push. So like whenever you're playing a main tank or even just general tank, understand before you push into the enemy, understand where your supports are. Oh, my supports are here. Oh, my supports are here. So that way you can stay in their LOS, as well as when you start pushing forward, whether you're pushing to point or maybe you're going on this high ground, wherever you're going, then when you stabilize again, sort of look again, is my supports with me? Am I okay? Or oh, they're under pressure. Okay, I need to play more slow. I'm not getting enough heals. So since under pressure, I'm not going to get a lot of heals. I have to play slower and live. I can't be as aggressive as I normally would. So like that's a really important thing for tanks, is sort of being like aware of your supports before fights and mid. Okay. Last thing is DPS. And I think one of the biggest things that I see a lot of issues with DPS is, yes, DPS get a lot of damage, done, and that's awesome. Damage done, you're getting gold medals, great. Like that's, that's awesome. But the fact that matters, it doesn't really matter too much. What really matters is, are you actually getting final blows? Are you actually helping your team like actually get straight up kills? And are you getting those kills yourself, or are you sort of cherry picking them, right? If you're getting them yourself, then that's really good, right? And then if you're cherry picking them, fine, that's still decent. But like getting them yourself is also really good. And the next thing also is, after you get said kills, do you live, right? Like, do you live after you get those kills? If you get a kill or 2 kills and then you die, again, that's not really worth it, right? You want to be able to stay alive. Okay, so those are sort of the basic tips based off roles. Let's sort of move into like understanding your kit. So the reason why I say understanding understanding your kit is really important for gold players is because a lot of people like stack CDs or don't use their CDs as optimally as they could. So some simple examples of this is like an Audible just nade themselves when they have like a Mercy right next to them that can heal, or a Lucio healing. And you could have used that nade to heal your team or look for an aggressive anti. Or a Zarya will just self bubble when like they're full HP, when they could be taking some damage and like being aggressive, and then self bubble and then get more value out of the bubble and keep going aggressive, right? So there's small things like that, or like Sigma shield, essentially just putting like their shield all the way out and not taking it back. Like, just having it go really far forward into the enemy team and just letting it break. Like that's not, that's not really using their kit correctly, or not using grass to help you live. So the concept is essentially is using your CDs and alts more optimally. And not, you will really want to avoid just spam using them. Like, don't just spam use your CDs and ultimates. That's really bad. Like, try and think about it. Like, for, McCree stun, don't just use stun when you need to. Save it for one-on-ones. For roll, maybe use it when you're in trouble so you can get away. Don't always just use it, for reloads. It's good to use it for reloads or damage output, but sometimes you might need it to, like, you're under pressure, you roll back, and, your support's LOS. Another example is, like, Ana's, like, just spamming sleeps when, the enemy team has a lot of dive heroes, and you might need sleeps against them. So hopefully that makes sense. Like, understand your kit. Don't just sort of, use CDs because you want to use CDs. Now, the next thing is playing your strengths, and this is like a tricky one, right? Because you normally have like two situations. Either you play to sort of like carry, or you play like the team value. And it's almost like sort of like a weighing scale, where it's like, do you play for the team value or do you play to try and carry somebody? And the way to look at this, like if you carry, maybe you're a mechanically really strong Widow and you can get like a pick a fight or two picks a fight, but that's not enough because maybe your Reinhardt is just dying a lot, or maybe your tanks are just struggling, they need more help taking space. Or better example of this probably be supports. Maybe you're playing like Zen and you're like an insanely good Zen, but your tanks just take a crazy amount of damage, and because of this, like they just need more heals. So like you might need to play something like BAP or on Moira, but if you do that, you're not gonna be able to get those one pick a fight or two pick a fight. So you sort of have to like figure out, based off the situation you're in, is the carrying actually worth it? If you're able to carry and like win a fight or win or two fights and it's working, then yeah, go for it. But if you're carrying and it's not working, then probably look to try and like adapt a bit more and go for team value. Okay, don't just revert to team value in low SR. Try and play for carry potential. And the best thing also for carry potential, like can normally be team value, is play around like meta heroes. And if you don't know really what meta heroes are, is go look at the top 500 leaderboard and look at like sort of what's like what are the ones that are like coming a lot, right? Like what are the common ones eventually. So right now you'll see a lot of BAP, you'll see a lot of Zen, you'll see a lot of Brig for support, for instance. DPS should be like Kree, Echo, Ash, and maybe something Tracer. Okay. Let's move to the next one, living. I already went into this, but I'm just gonna say straight up again, no matter like you should be living. If your KD is really low, or you have a crazy deaths per 10, or you're dying first or second, a lot in fights, then you're doing something wrong. The game at a high level is supposed to feel smooth and it should feel nice. So if you're dying a lot, you're playing Respawn Simulator, you're positioning too aggressively, you're positioning poorly, or you're not like using your CDs correctly, or something's going wrong with how you're playing your hero or something else. So you need to first understand that you should be living, and if you're dying early, like that's just bad. You're not getting value. Almost all heroes you want uptime. Support heroes are like the most important, and tanks are probably the next ones. Because if you don't have your tanks, if your tanks die, then you can't take space. Supports die, then your tanks can't take space inherently too. So it's really important that both those roles are essentially living a lot longer. Next thing is winning unfavorable matchups. So this sort of goes into like the carrying aspect, where it's like, I'll use an example as like Zen. If you're very good and you can like sort of take like a Tracer 1v1 and you can win that, that's huge, right? Yeah, or maybe like as Brig, you're really good at 1v1s and you know how to like deal with Reinhardts. Like, if it's a 1v1 versus a Reinhardt, you know how to flail him back, you know how to like perfectly play the distance. Or as D.Va, you know how to like 1v1 a Winston, which is favorable actually, and you know how to beat that, right? Like stuff like that. Like you should know how to like win some of these 1v1s so that essentially you can get value. Like Zen versus Genji is another one, or Ana versus Genji. That's a little bit unfavorable for Ana as well. But if you hit a really good nade, hit maybe a sleeper nade plus one shot, and then you live, you probably win that, right? So winning these sort of unfavorable matchups will essentially give you, again, a quote unquote carry potential, because you'll get a kill and you're not supposed to, and if you live on top of that, that can essentially help your team carry. And the last thing that I didn't really mention here is sort of playing the odds. And what I mean by this is like, if you're losing a lot, like, you're sort of like down 3, there's something going wrong. It could be a lot of things. It could be like the time you're playing. It could be like, just like you're not playing well. Um, you're not playing. Whoops, I'm trying here. You're not playing well, which is okay. It's fine. Like everyone needs breaks. It could be you could have a lot of levers. Levers. You could have a bunch of Smurfs on, which are like killing your games. It could be maybe you're like the duo that you're working on. If you're playing a duo isn't working well. I know for a fact, actually, for me, if I solo queue, I climb very fast. If I group up, I normally don't climb very well. But in general, I would say duos. If you have like duo that like makes sense, for instance, like supports and tanks, or tanks and DPS, like those are like two ones that really make sense because supports help tanks. And if you have like dive tanks and dive DPS, like again, those make sense as well. So like if you have duos that make sense and you can coordinate with each other to get like inherent value, that'll also help you climb. Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. And thank you for watching like the whole thing. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Um, if you guys did like it, I'm probably gonna leave a comment below. I'm probably gonna do like continue the series, and I'll do it for plat, I'll do it for diamond, I'll do it for masters, and I'll do it for GM. Um, and yeah, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, guys.